volare, wow, wow, cantare, oh. Today, in 2026, Americans are consumed with the issue of immigration, focusing on the issue of legal and illegal status of the newly arrived in this country. And may surprise some of our viewers that immigration has been a hot topic for many, many years in this country, and that in different eras, various ethnic and national groups have been subject to hatred and even atrocities by so-called law-abiding citizens whose ancestors happened to immigrate here sooner than others. These people are called nativists. The hypocrisy is so outrageous, and underlying most of this issue is hidden racial prejudice. The Irish, the Chinese, the Spanish, the Italians, and others have all felt the sting of hatred. For our purposes, we will focus on the difficulties faced by Italians who have immigrated to the United States at various times in our history. Italians have been immigrating to this country since before the Revolutionary War, and the number of Italian immigrants peaked during the time period of 1880 to 1920. It is estimated that over 4 million Italian natives, mostly from southern regions of Italy, arrived here during that time. New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, and New Orleans were all cities with large populations concentrated in Little Italies, where Italian and various Italian dialects were heard on the streets, which were lined with Italian specialty businesses and food stores on the first floor of low-rent tenements. These southern Italian immigrants were mostly uneducated farmers and laborers who had faced extreme poverty in their homeland and had become desperate enough to make the devastating decision to leave their homeland and cross the ocean, perhaps never to return. Can you imagine how fearful they must have been? Many did not speak English. Many had to accept the lowest jobs available, many of those jobs dangerous and without fair pay or dignity. Italians were looked down as the lowest level of society, equal or below African Americans, who had always been tormented by this country. In addition, many of the immigrants were preyed upon by the so-called mano nera, which purported to be an Italian criminal organization so vile and dangerous that no immigrant could escape their power. Scholars have since debunked the influence and even the existence of the mano nera, proving that many crimes committed by the purported organization were perpetrated by lone criminals seeking to boost their own fear factor by invoking the name mano nera. But Americans and nativists who were born here believed in the organization, and this added more fuel to the hateful fires of anti-Italian sentiment. There are many well-documented incidents of intolerance to Italian immigrants. Between the years 1880 and 1921, there were at least 50 documented cases of Italians being lynched in 9 different states. Most famously, 11 lynchings of Italian immigrants in New Orleans in 1891. In 1893, 1 lynching in Denver. In 1895, 6 murders in Walsenburg, Colorado. In 1896, 5 lynchings in Tallulah, Louisiana. On March 14, 2019, LaToya Cantrell, mayor of New Orleans, issued a proclamation of apology for the lynchings of 11 Italian immigrant boys and men that took place in 1891. The lynchings followed the murder of New Orleans Police Chief David C. Hennessy, who was assassinated on October 15, 1890. It was widely reported in the city's newspapers at the time that Hennessy's last words were, "The Dagos did it." Of course, that was a derogatory term for Italians. Police arrested over 100 Italian immigrants, many of whom were Sicilian. They were accused of being part of the mafia or another secret criminal organization, and this idea heavily influenced American perceptions of Italians thereafter. 19 of the men were put on trial. In March 1891, 9 defendants were acquitted or had mistrials declared. Many New Orleanians were enraged, believing corruption or jury tampering had led to the verdicts. The next day, a mob of 5,000 citizens, led by prominent political figures and businessmen, gathered outside the Orleans parish prison after inflammatory speeches. The crowd stormed into the prison, broke into the cells, and lynched 11 Italian men and boys by shooting, hanging, and mutilation. Here are a few historical excerpts from contemporary newspapers that reported on or reacted to the 1891 New Orleans lynching shortly after the incident. These illustrate how heavily biased and sensationalized the coverage was at the time, reflecting widespread anti-Italian sentiment. From the New York Times, "The vengeance of the people has been appeased. 11 of the murderers of Chief Hennessy have paid the penalty which the law was powerless to inflict. The mafia no longer has a foothold in New Orleans." This is from the New Orleans Times-Democrat. "The populace rose in its might and executed summary justice upon the villains whom the corrupt juries had turned loose upon the city. It is deplorable, but natural, that public patience should at least give way." From the Chicago Tribune, 11 Sicilians, supposed members of the notorious Mafia Society, have been taken from prison and lynched by an infuriated populace. The incident is regarded as a warning to criminals of all nationalities. The Italian government was outraged. This is from the Italian newspaper La Tribunata Illustrata. "The massacre of our compatriots in Louisiana is an insult to Italy, and the whole country grieves for the fallen. The Italian government must demand satisfaction." The lynching triggered an international crisis between the United States and Italy. Italy severed diplomatic relations with the United States and recalled its ambassador. The United States government eventually paid $25,000 in indemnities to the victims' families, though no one was prosecuted for the murders. In addition, this incident was instrumental in the creation of Columbus Day, which the United States government created to appease Italian American citizens after this lynching. The world-renowned case of Sacco and Vanzetti during the 1920s became one of the most controversial legal cases in American history. Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti were 2 Italian immigrants who held radical anarchist political beliefs. Sacco was a skilled shoemaker, and when one of the shoe factories in Braintree, Massachusetts was robbed, Sacco and Vanzetti became suspects. 2 people were killed during the robbery, which netted the perpetrators over $15,000, a huge sum at the time. Sacco and Vanzetti were arrested several weeks later. At the time of the arrest, both were carrying firearms, and Sacco had bullets similar to those used in the robbery. The defense claimed the ballistic evidence was flawed, and the gun owned by Sacco could not be proven to be the murder weapon. Judge Webster Thayer, who oversaw the trial, was later criticized as biased. He made openly prejudicial remarks about the defendant's political beliefs. Nevertheless, the men were convicted and sentenced to death. Despite international protests, appeals for retrial were denied. Intellectuals, writers, and activists, including Albert Einstein himself and the great author H.G. Wells, pleaded for clemency. However, on August 23, 1927, Sacco and Vanzetti were executed in the electric chair at Charlestown State Prison in Boston, Massachusetts. The Sacco and Vanzetti case illustrates the tensions of early 20th century America between nativism and immigration, between political radicalism and state authority, and between justice and prejudice. Regardless of their actual guilt or innocence, their trial remains a powerful reminder of how fear and bias can distort the course of justice. In 1977, Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis issued a proclamation declaring that Sacco and Vanzetti had been unfairly tried and that any disgrace should forever be removed from their names. He cited evidence that the judicial process was influenced by anti-immigrant and anti-anarchist prejudice during the 1920s. The case had deeply divided public opinion and damaged confidence in the Massachusetts justice system. Once again, Italian-American organizations claimed another social justice victory over anti-Italian intolerance. Most recently, however, the ugly head of anti-Italian sentiment has once again been raised in the form of anti-Columbus protests. The movement against celebrating Columbus began gaining traction in the late 20th century. Many indigenous communities argue that Columbus's arrival in 1492 marked the start of centuries of genocide, slavery, and dispossession of native lands, not a discovery. One major early moment was in 1992, during the 500th anniversary of Columbus's voyage. Native American activists organized widespread protests. In Denver, for example, the Columbus Day Parade was canceled because of demonstrations opposing the glorification of colonial violence. Many statues of Columbus were smeared and dishonored with red paint symbolizing the blood of Native people. The claims against Columbus have all been proven as lies by many scholars and historians who were quick to come to Columbus's defense. This program itself produced 2 shows debunking the smears and defamation against one of Italy's most famous navigators. They are all available on our YouTube channel. See details to access the channel at the end of this program. Many protests have pushed for the replacement of Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. Major cities like Seattle, Denver, Minneapolis, and Washington, D.C. now celebrate the latter instead. Politely and diplomatically, major Italian-American organizations have suggested that Columbus Day should not be replaced, but that alternative dates for an Indigenous Peoples Day be found. If you study books and original accounts written during Columbus's 4 voyages to the New World, any intelligent person will conclude that personal smears against Columbus are outright lies and fabrications. A man of high morals, he sought not riches, but a route to bring the Christian faith to the Orient. Upon encountering Native Americans, he treated them fairly and justly, declaring that he loved and admired the indigenous people of the New World. In a world in which non-whites are gaining increasingly more political, economic, and social standing, he is ironically being depicted as the symbol of white supremacy. Unfortunately, the anti-Columbus movement splatters once again focused hatred to the Italian American community at large. Thanks to the efforts of United Italian American organizations, the reputation of Columbus has been maintained, and the fight against anti-Italian sentiment continues. It is their hope that justice and truth will prevail. Well, John, it's so nice to see you, and I want to thank you for being on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great to be on.
John, what is your title and function with the Order Sons and Daughters of Italy in America?
I'm the president of the National Commission for Social Justice of the Sons and Daughters of Italy.
What is your function there? What does the CSJ do?
Well, again, we fight bias and bigotry, but we also promote a positive image of Italian Americans. Well, we have loads of positive image materials. We talk about different Italian Americans that have accomplished so much to build this country up. And basically, when an Italian American does something that's noteworthy, we push it out there, get it out to all our members, and get it out really through social media to the world.
And then you have another function to fight the bigotry and the
Absolutely.
anti-Italian sentiment. Um, what what have been some of the past victories that the CSJ has had in this area?
I think one of our biggest victories was getting Mayor Cantrell from New Orleans to issue an apology for the 1891 lynching of Italian immigrants in New Orleans. That was a hard fought uh, issue of us, and we got the mayor to finally do it. And she took a lot of heat, by the way, for issuing that apology. Uh, a lot of people in her party were opposed to it, but she said it was the right thing to do, and we really applaud her for that. There are some other victories, getting people to acknowledge that mistakes were made and apologize for them.
Are you familiar with the case of Sacco and Vanzetti?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a case that really basically threw justice out the window. They weren't, the trial was a mockery of justice, and Governor Dukakis, believe it or not, did apologize for that mockery of justice that took place. These two individuals, although they were anarchists and probably causing a lot of problems, um, the execution of Sacco and Vanzetti was unfair and unjust.
How did the CSJ accomplish this? Is it something that boggles my mind? How do you go about doing this?
Well, with New Orleans, it took a lot of work. Our attorney, Mike Santo, took the lead, and he had a lot of discussions down in New Orleans. Just to let you know, when we had the apology, it was amazing because we had descendants of victims that were at that apology, and we had descendants of the people that actually did the lynching. As a matter of fact, the chief's grandson was the one that provided the refreshments for that day. So it was real.
That's absolutely amazing. That's
Yeah, it
amazing.
really. It was great. It was a great day. A lot of people still don't know about that lynching, and that's a shame because it is the largest lynching that took place in America. So
Yeah, and
so for me, it really was something, and I applaud Mike Santo meeting with the leadership and meeting with the government, the mayor's office and her staff, and they really got it done. So it was great.
you were really instrumental with the New Orleans. thing? Were you personally you were involved in it? That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Now, do you find that anti-Italian sentiment is more prevalent in one region of the country over another?
No, I think it's equally a problem for us. The biggest problem we have with bigotry towards Italian Americans are Italian Americans themselves. Many of them, many of them don't realize or don't want to accept the fact that they are being discriminated against. I could give you an example. If you if you question 1,000 Italian Americans in a room, how many of them watch The Sopranos? You'll probably get about 95% of those people that are going to raise their hand because to them, this is just a movie, it's just a show. We're being thin-skinned, but the problem with these shows is it promotes this negative stereotype of Italian Americans that we're a bunch of mobsters and buffoons, and they don't get it. And that's our biggest hurdle that we have to overcome. And through education, hopefully, through education and getting the word out there, maybe we could start changing the minds and the attitudes of people. You take a movie like The Godfather, which was probably one of the best movies ever made. But because of the way that movie was made, because of the fact that it is one of the best movies, you get people that Italians that are watching over and over and over again. Uh, and you get the non-Italians that watch it over and over and over again. And in their minds, it still puts in the idea that that's what our lifestyle is, that's what we are. Every Italian has to be connected somewhere to organized crime. And every Italian has somebody that they could go to and that would go to them. So it's a problem. And that's one of our biggest issues that we have. How do we get Italian Americans to focus on the fact that these shows, these movies hurt us? And to be honest with you, we're probably the last ethnic group or the last group in America that it's still acceptable to stereotype. Any other group, you would get protests and you get elected officials yelling and screaming that this is wrong. But with Italian Americans, with Italian bigotry, it seems to be acceptable in the norm, and it's not acceptable to us.
John, that is very enlightening. I personally have never uh, thought about those films in that way. And I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Now, moving on, what are some of the current issues that besides, the acceptance of stereotypes by Italian Americans themselves, are there, what about the Columbus issue?
It's a huge issue. We've been battling this issue all over the country, and we'll continue to Battle it. We're very pleased that the president came out and supported Christopher Columbus and the holiday, and now he's even talking about putting a statue of Christopher Columbus on the White House lawns. Um, but we still have to fight this negative history that Columbus was this murderous, rapist animal, and yet we have the evidence that shows he isn't, and he wasn't. That he was someone that respected the Native Americans and ordered his men to treat them fairly and treat them with respect. He even hung 6 Spaniards because they were treating the Native Americans wrong and they were raping them, and he had them hung, which he got attacked for from Spain. But look, Christopher Columbus was a great man. He did great things, but now that part of the history is being diluted into the fact that Howard Zinn, with his ridiculous history of the Americas, uh, it's just a total false narrative that he's pushing towards Columbus. We're working very closely with the Native American Guardian Association, and they agree with us. And we're supporting them on their issues. And they've already come out in support of Christopher Columbus. They said they know that this man didn't do all these things, but they also said they have a motto: educate, don't eradicate. Look, throughout history, you got bad all over the place. You have good things that happen and bad things that happen. If you forget the bad things and try to hide them, they're going to happen again. So you have to push them out there. Um, what happened to Native Americans was disgusting, but it wasn't done by Christopher Columbus. It was done by those who came after Columbus. So right now we're working with the Native Americans with the Massapequa, where uh, the governor of New York is ordering Massapequa High School to do away with the mascots of Native Americans. And the Native American community, through NAGA, they feel it's an insult. They feel that these mascots are something of pride for them and their culture and their heritage and should be kept. So we're working with them on that also. So it's an ongoing thing, but this Christopher Columbus thing, it gets worse and worse. Currently, we have Congressman Relly from Ohio proposed a bill in Congress that would strip any entity of federal funds if they change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. Now, that's still in committee. It's probably going to be a long shot to get it passed, but it's something that really makes sense. We support indigenous peoples having, first of all, Native Americans don't like to be called indigenous Native Americans. So we're now supporting, and we asked Congressman Relly to either amend that legislation or put a new one in declaring August 9th as Native American Historical and History and Culture Day. And let's get the schools to start teaching the truth about Native Americans. You know, when we think of Native Americans, we think of cowboys and Indians and how bad they were. We don't think about their great heritage that they have. So I think we have to, just like we have to push the history of Italians and the accomplishments of Italian Americans, we have to do the same thing with our brothers and sisters in the Native American community.
John, I agree wholeheartedly. Now, I'd like to ask you, do you ever foresee a complete end anti-Italian sentiment here in the United States?
I wish I could, but you got to realize there are a lot of ignorant people out there.
Absolutely.
And these are the ones that just they think it's funny. You're with a non-Italian who you just met, and now they know you're an Italian American, and the first thing they'll ask you is, are you connected to the mob? And that again has to do with television. It's got to do with the movies. It's got to do with the periodicals. And then you get all these other idiots, uh, these uh, these former organized crime people that are now having podcasts talking about their life and organized crime. And I mean, it's just ridiculous that anybody would even watch that, but they do. And these are just ignorant people that are just hurting us more than anything else.
You know, unfortunately, I've had that very same question asked of me.
Mhm.
And, with regard to my music, and because I played in a catering band that was at an Italian run catering hall, the first thing that the guy said to me was, "Oh, you must be connected to the mob to work there." I said, "No, not at all. Not at all. It was just on the strength of our musical ability."
Yeah,
Well, John, I think you're doing a great job with the CSJ.
trying our
And
best.
and I want to thank you very much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay, have a wonderful day.
You too. Take care.
If you're really interested in the truth, see some of my videos on YouTube about Christopher Columbus. Not only are they entertaining, they're also very educational, and I think you'll find that the real Christopher Columbus is not the man that he's being made out to be today. Thanks for watching.